Hello and welcome back. I have a little bit of a new filming setup today, so I'm going to give it a try, but I am going to bring you my January, what is it called? January wrap up. Oh my god, wow, I forgot what that word was for the longest time. But in January I read 10 books, and 9 of them are here. One is upstairs, and I'm only half counting this one because it is a children's book. And it's not like a middle grade, it's an actual children's book, but it was cute, so yeah. Anyway, I have my laptop out for the first time in forever just because I am gonna need to look at my review ratings on these. And yeah, so let's just jump right on into the books I want to talk about today. Alright, so the first book I read in the month of January, I finished pretty early on, and that was, I listened to the audiobook for If I Stay by Gail Forman. Now, if you don't know, If I Stay has to deal with a girl who is Mia, who is involved in a car accident, and excuse you. And in that car accident, she I'm trying to see if this is a spoiler. Okay, that would be a spoiler. But in that accident, she does suffer some terrible losses. And this follows her trying to decide, like in her subconscious, if she wants to stay in the mortal world or move on. And I have to say, I've watched the movie for this so many times. I used to love this movie. Haven't seen it in a couple years, but I finally picked up the book, and the audiobook was the perfect format for me. If I didn't listen to the audiobook, this probably would have been more of a 3-star rating, but because the audiobook incorporates music throughout, and it really fits because Mia is a classical musician, like it really bumped up the reading experience for me, and I flew through this just wanting to figure out how it ended. And yeah, that's really all I can say about it, but in the end this was a 4-star read for me. The second book I read in January, which I don't know why I keep saying January. We know it's January. But anyway, the second book I read is going to be The Vanishing Star by Maureen Johnson, which is the sequel to Truly Devious. Oh my god. I held off reading this book for so long because I initially thought Truly Devious was going to be a duology. So I picked this up, I read Truly Devious, and I waited to read Truly Devious until I knew The Vanishing Star was coming out. And then I found out it was going to be a trilogy. So I waited as long as I could until it was really close to release date for The Hand on the Wall. And I'm glad I did, because this really made me want to throw things. Like, I almost threw the book across the room at least 4 or 5 times. And yeah, I think that's a sign of a good book. If you didn't know, Truly Devious follows this girl Stevie, who is attending Ellingham Academy in the present, and at Ellingham Academy it is famous for a true crime case that Stevie is really well interested in and she's really well versed in, and that had happened at the school. And then we also follow the past of how that case had unfolded, and we follow that in almost real time, like trying to solve that as well. And in The Vanishing Star, we get some answers. We don't get all the answers. We don't get the answers I wanted, so yeah. In the end, The Vanishing Star was a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I had read is the one I do not have physically, but it is called Shoot for the Moon, Snoopy, which is a children's book. But I picked this up when I was out in Erie with Jamie because I really wanted to read it because it's really cute. Snoopy is one of my all-time favorite cartoon characters. I grew up loving the Peanuts, and I found it funny, and I got it as a partial gift from my dad as well. But Shoot for the Moon, Snoopy was obviously a 5 out of 5 stars. It was cute. It was Snoopy preparing to go up to the moon. The next book I read and finished. I don't know for sure if I finished this before the next one, but it is the next book I read physically, and that is What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This has been on my radar since it came out. What is making noises? But this has been on my radar since it came out. I hesitated picking it up because I'm not big for contemporary. I'm not big on young adult romance. And Adam Silvera, his writing scares me, and I didn't like what I read from Becky Albertalli, because I read Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, and I did not really like that one. So I was scared I would go into this not liking it, but boy was I wrong. I flew through this, and I believe Jamie cut me off at almost 200 pages the day I bought it. And then I flew through the rest of it within the next couple days. In the end, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was probably more of a 4.5 because I know I had a couple issues with it, but I did not expect the ending, so the twist ending really helped bump it up for me. Alright, this next book on my list is one that I've had such a complicated relationship with. I've tried reading it multiple times, and I was never able to get through it until this reread, and this was an audiobook, but that is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. Now, as I said, I had a complicated relationship with Cinder, and that is because I bought it when I first heard of BookTube. I believe Winter was actually just coming out, or it wasn't out yet, because Cinder, Scarlet, and Cress were all out in paperback, so I bought Cinder. I liked like the first 25 pages, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buy the next two. Bought the next two. And then I put Cinder down and never went back to it. And I kind of regret that because I actually really like this book. And every book in the series does get better, I think. So in the end, my rating for Cinder was a 3 out of 5 stars. Alright, so according to Goodreads, the next book I finished is Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. Once again, I listened to the audiobook for this. I do love the narrator for these books. I do think she's actually a really good narrator, and I hope to find more that she has narrated in the future because I loved how she voiced the characters. But I enjoyed Scarlet more than I enjoyed Cinder, and I was actually once again really surprised because Cinder was towards the end more of an average read. I wasn't really like falling for the characters, like falling head over heels for like the romance because I predicted the couple, but Scarlet got better. And I wish I could tell you more of what happens in Scarlet, but I did actually, because I marathoned the series, I do have a lot of details in it that I'm not sure what happens in which book and what counts as like a major spoiler. I promise, I started more books in between when I read these, but the next book I finished was Cress, once again by Marissa Meyer. And Cress was actually one of my favorites in this series. And this is also the last book I had bought before this month and has been on my shelf for probably about 3 to 4 years. But Cress we meet Cress in this book, and I know she's based off of Rapunzel. So she's alone in her satellite, which is her tower, and she was cute. And I just loved this like entire story about her because I loved seeing, even though I predicted the pairing, again, because it's very obvious, but I enjoyed seeing like Cress and Thorn's like relationship grow and really where things took like the turn in this one, to getting more serious, to preparing you for winter. In the end, Cress was a 5 out of 5 stars. So I'm just going by how Goodreads says I finished this because I really don't remember. But the next book Goodreads says I finished is Fairest by Marissa Meyer. I think this month was just the month of Marissa Meyer. But either way, I finished Fairest this month, and this is the first one I had ordered off of Amazon before like the end of the month. I was actually gonna read Winter before this one, but then I was like glancing through to see how many pages it was, and I saw like the Q&A in the back where Marissa Meyer herself says that Fairest falls in between Cress and Winter. So I did pick it up then, and I'm glad I did, but I'm not glad I did. Like, it made sense, like with a lot of things going into Winter, having the knowledge of like Queen Lavanna's background, and Winter made me appreciate Fairest more, but I didn't enjoy like seeing 3 books of how horrible Lavanna was, of her getting a redemption arc. Like, she doesn't need a redemption arc. There was no justification for anything Lavanna did, and nothing based on like her thinking she's right. So yeah, that's literally was This was probably like a 2.75, 3-star rating for me because I did enjoy my time reading it, but I didn't think the story was necessary. Oh my god, it's not a Marissa Meyer book. The next book I read in January was Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. I told the story in my haul, so I don't need to tell it again, but I have so many copies of this book. I met Adam, who's a really great guy and really sweet, and I loved this book, and I need the sequel now. So hopefully it comes out later this year, like maybe we can get a December release so I can have a birthday book. But either way, I cannot wait for the next book in the series, or the trilogy I think he said it's gonna be. And you need to pick up Infinity Sun because it is great. It is an urban fantasy that takes place in New York City and it has to deal with phoenixes. And I love it. And if you couldn't tell, I gave it a 5 out of 5 star. Alright, the last book I have to talk about this month, before I show it up, I want to pull that off, is going to be Winter by Marissa Meyer. I listened to this on audiobook. It made me so upset to see this ending, and I really want more of these characters and more of this world and just more of their adventures that isn't Stars Above, because I'm not really enjoying Stars Above. But I really enjoyed Winter, and it broke my heart to hear at the end and they all lived happily ever after, because I didn't want to say goodbye to these characters. So Winter was another 5 out of 5 stars for me, and I feel like I'm giving these 5-star ratings away so generously, but I believe maybe it was a 4.5 at some points because it did really drag on. I did find like the almost 1,000 pages this book is to be a little unnecessary, but like not as unnecessary as like the entirety of like Deathly Hallows and like the hunting for the Horcruxes scene. So, you know, not that unnecessary, but a little bit excessive, like needing more of the action. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today, guys. I will see you soon in another video, and make sure you click like, comment, and subscribe down below to see more of my face.